Just doing a mic test.
Hi, everyone. We're going to start in just a couple of minutes. We're just working out some technical issues, but we will begin shortly. Good morning, everyone. Got the thumbs up from Mike. My name is Councillor Stephen Holliday. I'm the chair of the Etobicoke York Community Council. We have quorum. I am now calling meeting 7 to order. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at the Etobicoke Civic Centre in the council chamber. This meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, Community Council would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order that they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Etobicoke York Community Council page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the City Clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on the CMP, the Clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices. I also want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at etcc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand and unmute your mic and indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. Seeing none, we'll proceed. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting on June 19th, 2023? Deputy Mayor Morley moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Before we go through the items, I would like to acknowledge a former councillor, Joe Mihevik. Welcome to today's meeting, sir. It's good to see you. I'll also turn the microphone over to Deputy Mayor Amber Morley, as you have a brief announcement you'd like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick one. My team and I have been working very hard to pull together our first annual Deputy Mayor Morley Fall Fest. That's going to be taking place October 1st down at Fairfield Senior Centre. We wanted to welcome our community members to join us there for celebration, acknowledging the changing of seasons, and holding space to be together. So lots of fun, music, food, all of the things you would expect at a community event. And we hope members of the public and colleagues will be able to join us. Again, it's October 1st from 12 to 5, and you can get more information on my website, ambermorley.com. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We will proceed to go through the items. The first item is EY 7.1, 175 to 185 Eileen Avenue, zoning bylaw amendment, decision report, approval. And we have one speaker, so we will hold that item. EY 7.2 is 15 Canmotor Avenue, zoning bylaw amendment application, decision report. Councillor Morley, there are no speakers on this item.
I do understand that there was potentially a request for presentation by the applicant, but I don't know that they've arrived, and obviously they've not registered to speak. So I was looking to move staff recommendations on this move approval.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 7.3, which is 5, 6, and 9 Jopling Avenue South, zoning bylaw amendment, decision report approval. We have two speakers, so we'll hold that item. EY 7.4, which is 56, 58, and 60 Fieldway Road, zoning bylaw amendment application, decision report. We have two speakers, so we'll hold that item as well. EY 7.5 is 111 Plunkett Road, part lot control exemption, decision report. That's Councillor Peruzza, so we'll just hold that down. I know he's on his way. He should be here shortly. EY 7.6, 159 and 161 to 181 Mulock Avenue and 6 Lloyd Avenue, zoning bylaw amendment application appeal report. Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, I'll move the staff recommendation.
Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that item is carried. EY 7.7, 2405 to 2411 and 2417 Lakeshore Boulevard West, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision applications appeal report. There are no speakers registered. Councillor Morley.
We are moving staff recommendations on this item.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 7.8, 4195 and 4221 Dundas Street West, and 556, 558, 560, 562, and 564 Prince Edward Drive North, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications appeal report. We have speakers registered, and that item will be held. EY 7.9, 55 Allanhurst Drive, request for a fence exemption to the Toronto Municipal Code, Chapter 447. We have a speaker registered, so we'll hold that item. EY 7.10, naming of 3 proposed private streets for a development at 3526 Lakeshore Boulevard West. Councillor Morley.
Sorry, my mic was already on. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are moving staff recommendations.
Councillor Morley moves staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. The 3 new names: Coral Place, Shoreline Drive, and Waterway Gate. Very good. EY 7.11, the West Mall and Waulron Street pedestrian crossing protection. Councillor Morley.
I am moving staff recommendations.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. EY 7.12, Albion Centre, Metrolinx, Finch West light rail transit traffic control signal changes. Councillor Crescent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an additional motion to this item that I'd like to introduce.
Okay.
And maybe we could hold it down and speak to it later.
Okay, we hold that item.
I think clerks has that. I'm sorry? Oh, could I do everything? Okay, yeah, it's straightforward. Maybe we could deal with it right now. Okay,
Go right ahead.
So then EY 712, Mr. Chair, that's straightforward, is providing a full access from Finch, just further down from 23 Division. However, at 23 Division, there's been a request by TPS, and also I've met with them and staff with respect to providing an additional emergency access across Finch over the LRT tracks, enabling emergency vehicles to complete a left turn maneuver from 23 Division onto Finch Avenue, to ensure that the response time is as fast as it can be, and so that's the new motion. So maybe we'll deal with 712 first and move that.
Okay, on Councillor Crescenti's amendment, all those in favor? Any opposed? The amendment carries. On the item as amended, all those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried.
So if we could show the other motion. I'm sorry? No, there's another motion providing an additional emergency access. You don't have that? I have it here, note as a motion. That you should, oh, this one here? There's 2 access points. Okay. All right, then we're good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're good.
All right.
Just want to make sure we got them both in.
If anything changes, we'll reopen it
Yep.
later. Thank you.
Thank you.
EY 7.13, Bicknell Avenue and Westbury Crescent, always stop control. Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, I'll move the staff recommendation.
Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 7.14, Cudworth Place at Robin Hood Road, compulsory stop control. That would be my item. May I have a councillor move the staff recommendations? Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. EY 7.15, Earlington Avenue, traffic calming poll results. There are no speakers on this item. Councillor Morley.
I'll be moving staff recommendations on this item.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 7.16, Government Road, traffic calming poll results. We have a speaker registered, so we'll hold that item. EY 7.17, on-street electric vehicle charging stations on Kings Lynn Road, parking amendment. Councillor Morley.
Staff recommendations.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 7.18, on-street vehicle charging stations in various locations in parking amendments, non-delegated locations, Ward 3, 5, and 7. May I have a member of council volunteer to move that?
I'd like to hold the item down.
Councillor Nunziata is holding the item. Okay. EY 7.19, Emmett Avenue parking amendment. Councillor Nunziata.
Move the staff recommendation.
Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. EY 7.20, Lakeshore Boulevard West parking amendments. Councillor Morley.
I'll be moving staff recommendations.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. EY 7.21, Zorra Street parking amendments. Councillor Morley.
We'll also be moving staff recommendations on that item.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 7.22, 801, the Queensway construction staging area.
I have a motion.
Councillor Morley, you have a motion. Did you want to
Pre-submit.
hold it, or did you want to just move it now?
I'm happy to move it now if clerks have that available. No?
Nope.
Okay,
Okay,
well,
so
I'll
we'll
hold
hold
it
that
down.
item down.
Thank you.
Got it. EY 7.23 is an item of new business. Longbourn Drive between Willow Ridge Road and Redgrave Drive, implementation of permit parking. Councillor Crescent, actually, we just have to move to introduce that item. All those in favor of introducing the item? Any opposed? And we will hold that down, give everyone a chance to take a look at it.
Okay.
EY 7.24 is Habitant Drive and Bradstock Road, all-way stop control. That's Councillor Perutz's, but we'll move to introduce that item. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item's being introduced. We'll hold it down. And EY 7.25, Laura Road and Lomar Drive, all-way stop control. That's Councillor Perutz's. We'll just move to introduce that item. All those in favor? Any opposed? And we'll hold that item, give everyone a chance to have a look at it. Madam Clerk, I'll just check with you before we go to the top. Are there any other items of new business? Very good. Okay, so we will go to the top of the list. The first item is EY 7.1, 175 to 185 Eileen Avenue, zoning bylaw amendment, decision report. We have a speaker, and that is Michael Vanny from Weston Consulting. Do we have Michael in the room or online? Hi, Michael. Michael, welcome to the Etobicoke York Community Council. You've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, committee. I'm going to keep this super short. My name is Michael Vanny. I'm an associate with Weston Consulting. Just wanted to be here today to answer any questions that the committee has or any members of the public. We've reviewed the staff report and support staff's recommendation. The application has changed over the years. It originally started with 150 apartment dwelling type units, and we've reduced that down now to 58 townhouse units, which includes 56 3-bedroom and 2 4-bedroom units, so larger family-oriented community, which responds to 2 public consultations that we had throughout the process. So I'm here if there's any questions, and thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the speaker? Seeing none. Questions of staff? Sorry, I should just check. Are there any other speakers that wish to speak to this item? Seeing none. Questions of staff? Seeing none. To speak, Councillor Nunziata.
Thank you. So I'll move the staff recommendation, and as well I have a supplementary motion, which is that we'll put on the screen, a silent motion. It's about the parking on the street. I won't read all of it. Basically is to not allow from the residents that are moving into the townhouses able to get a parking permit on the street. And I know this has been done before, but just to give a bit of history of this site was a warehouse, body shop, there was so many businesses over there in this site, and we had numerous problems over the years with residents complaining that there were parties going on all night in this facility, booze, and so we constantly received hundreds of complaints on this establishment for years. And then the site was purchased, and the residents were very happy about the site being purchased. And originally, as the applicant mentioned, the original application, which was in 2021, called for 150 residential dwelling units in two-story apartment buildings. So at that time, the residents had concerns on that original application. And after speaking to the applicant and working with the planning staff, and I'd like to thank the planning staff on working with the applicant on this, it was reduced to 58 townhouses. And so when we had our last public meeting, residents were very supportive of the new application. The only concern they have, Eileen Avenue, is at Scarlett and St. Clair, and it's a dead-end street, Eileen Avenue. And they were concerned that right now there is on-street permit parking for residents that live on the street, and they were concerned that any residents that move into the townhouses, that they would take over the parking permits on the street, even though the applicant is providing parking for the residents. So that was the only concern that came up at the public meeting, and that's the reason I'm moving that motion. So the residents will be reassured that, in fact, they would be able to continue keeping their parking permit on Eileen Avenue, and that the parking spaces on Eileen will not be reduced by the additional residents that are moving in to the townhouses. So I'm moving the staff recommendation as well as my motion. And thank you to planning. I was really actually very surprised and so happy that the applicant came back and reduced the original units. As you know, right now it's a nightmare in that area. We're widening the bridge at St. Clair and Scarlett and St. Clair and Dundas and to 4 lanes. So there's a lot of construction going on right now too. And so the residents have had to put up with a lot in the last year with all that construction. So I'm hoping that once we get that bridge open, which I've been working on for over 20 years, and Joe Mihevik, that's been an issue even when you were on council, right? That bridge. So we are finally going to widen it to 4 lanes. And so thank you again, and I'll move those recommendations.
Councillor Nunziata moves an amendment with respect to parking. All those in favor on the amendment? Any opposed? That carries. And on the item as amended, all those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. Thank you. The next item is EY 7.3, 5, 6, and 9, Jopling Avenue South, zoning bylaw amendment, decision report approval. We have 2 speakers registered. The first is Mitch Gascoigne from Centre Court. Mitch, did I get that right? Gascoigne?
Yep, that's it, Gascoigne.
Welcome to the Etobicoke York Community Council. You've got 5 minutes to speak. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. Hi, everyone. I'm Mitch Gascoigne. I'm a partner at Centre Court. We're the applicant and developer of this site. This is our second building that we've submitted for approval in the Kipling Station 6 Points area. We think it's a fantastic place to build and for folks to live. Transit connectivity, really great planning staff to work with. We made this submission just over a year ago, and we're really happy with where we landed. I'm here to answer any questions that there may be of me and to just make myself available.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for joining us today, Mitch. It's good to see you, and glad this report is before us. As you know, we've had some residents and some general concerns related to some of the issues, specifically parking, and Councillor Nunziata just dealt with an item highlighting some of the general pressures that all communities and neighborhoods are experiencing. And I'm intending to move an amendment today just to ensure some of that additional consideration can be worked through at site plan. Is there still an openness to continue to review the parking and other related amenities within the building as we move forward with this application?
Yeah, well, we're always open to work with city staff, so of course. I don't know what's in the amendment, but by all means, during site plan, we're happy to coordinate further.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm going to pass the chair to Councillor Nunziata. I'm going to just ask a little bit.
Okay, Councillor Holiday, questions?
Thank you. Mitch, can you tell us what the plan is for parking on this?
So as we all know, and I think I spoke about this at the last time I came through, the citywide bylaw has maximum parkings instead of minimum parking. In this area, you know, the folks that we think are going to move into the building are going to be the ones that are going to rely on transit. Right now, you know, our plan would be to offer parking commensurate with what the market demand is. So there's 2 and 3 bedrooms units in this building. We suspect that those sorts of purchasers will want to buy themselves a parking spot, but you know, our plan is to minimize the amount of parking that would be available.
So how many units are there?
I think there's approximately 430 units.
And how many parking spaces are being provided in totality?
We like right now in the submitted plans there's a P2 that have about 30 parking spots, but the bylaw gives us the flexibility to increase that if when we go through the sales period there is more demand.
How many of them are visitor spaces?
So if there's 430 units, there would probably be about 5 or 6 visitor spaces.
So there's 400 units. Mother's Day rolls around and everyone comes to visit their mother. Where do they park?
They're going to park, just like they were elsewhere in the city. So, you know, there's folks that will be able to park below grade. There'll be others that will park on street parking, use the green P parking that's available. And hopefully there'll be a whole whack of them that take the TTC. Where's
the green P parking?
On the street parking. Sorry, publicly available parking.
Which streets?
I don't know if I could tell you the specific areas, but you know, along Bloor and Dundas, there's parking.
I am being a bit tongue in cheek, and I apologize, but I am being harsh on you because I am concerned about the parking. And so if you're not able to identify the streets, I'm worried. Is there anything in the report that speaks to how that overflow will work?
Yeah, so just to answer you a little bit more specifically, we've submitted transportation reports done by our engineers that have identified a substantial amount, or sufficient amount rather, of public parking in the area. We're also following in spite of these questions, we're following the citywide bylaw that has been passed. So we're not seeking to amend anything related to parking. We've had a transportation study that says there's a sufficient amount that will be able to service the building. And you know, we're also relying on the modal shift over the years of more and more people relying on public transportation.
Thanks, Mitch. Thank you. Okay, the next speaker I have registered is Adam Rogers. Is Adam available either in the room or online? Great.
Am I good to go?
Good morning, Adam. It's Stephen Holiday from the Etobicoke York Community Council. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, welcome to the Community Council. You have 5 minutes to speak. You may begin when you're ready.
I'm ready to start. Thank you very much. So I'm just speaking to this location. And one of my major concerns is fundamentally a lack of green space in this location. It's been mentioned by the Residents Association as well, but from what I can see, I don't see any publicly accessible space for this. Most of the amenities are only for the building, so there is no pop space. Also, for that matter, the current location is 3 family homes with a significant tree coverage, but we are replacing that with a net increase in concrete without, it seems, some reflection of green space in particular. All this area is having a large net increase in concrete, which is fine. We need homes. I get that. But if we don't consider a subsequent consideration for green space and tree lines, we're going to have a real heat sink in this area. It's actually mentioned by the Residents Association in this area. I also noticed, as was mentioned by Councillor Holiday, is the lack of parking. Now, personally, whichever way we go, parking is fine, as long as is consideration. If you add the totality, and I brought this up before, but if you add the fact that we're having all these different developments, if all these different developments have not enough parking, if you add them all up, like, yes, each individual one might say, okay, my particular location is fine for parking because of the spaces. But if you do that for every single location, we just don't have enough street parking. Now, ideally, we would reduce the amount of cars in general, but Etobicoke is going to take some time. So whatever way we go, we just have to be aware of that street parking piece, because this area was never built for street parking. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of this particular neighborhood. And what I did notice is, if they are going to say, hey, we don't need it, we're not going to go for as many spots, that's fine, but they can easily up the number of bike parking spaces. Bike parking is relatively price efficient. It says they have about 400 dwelling units and only 300 bike parking spaces. I feel they can up that number pretty easily with very little cost. And seeing as we're already going to put so much time and investment into bike infrastructure in this area, it seems like a very cost-efficient way to provide more options for residents who live in the area. Just make sure what my time is. Okay, I have lots of time. So I'll just summarize it. Very straightforward. Green space, I think, can be better. And as the Residents Association mentioned, and is a big issue in this city, there's consideration for dogs and off-leash space might be worthwhile thing to look into. Parking considerations in so much of where will people park in the area if they can't park underground. That is something to consider. And bike parking, I think they can easily increase the number of bike spaces almost to a 1-to-1 dwelling unit to bike space with very little cost in the grand scheme of things. And it would be a great addition. In fact, that we are, as I mentioned, we are increasing bike lanes on Bloor, and likely we're going to also be adding bike lanes to a degree on Dundas. So this is the time now to get that bike space in. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adam. Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, I will ask, is there anyone else that desires to speak on this particular item? Seeing none, questions of staff. May I pass the chair? Councillor Perruzza, can you take the chair while I ask a couple of questions?
I'm happy to do that.
Through you to staff. Question for planning. Can you talk to me a little bit about what the plan is for parking, specifically visitor parking? Are we meeting the requirement, or is the applicant meeting the requirement? Will Community Council be approving the required number of spaces for visitors? How does the math work?
Back to you, Mr. Chair. Council passed its parking requirements bylaw for the whole city a year and a half ago. It's bylaw 89-2022, which removed certain requirements and took on an approach which was, in bylaw, the provision, you could have no minimum and it would be market-based in terms of the number of spaces provided. Our transportation planning policy group is going to be reviewing how that bylaw has operated or been operationalized over the last year or so, and a report is scheduled to come back in 2024 looking at what's happened with that bylaw over the last year. Certainly there has been feedback back to our transportation planning group. I myself have provided such feedback where, while there seems to be less concern about the market-driven number of parking spaces servicing a building, because it would certainly be my guess that this applicant will provide far more than the current parking supply that they have once they start having a better understanding of sales. But there is some concern about the number of visitor parking spaces. What's before you is generally in compliance or in the direction of council's approved parking bylaw, but certainly myself and others have raised the issue of whether or not we are securing enough visitor parking in some of these buildings, and that is a matter that will also be part of that review.
So we are, it's five visitor parking.
It's 6, I think.
6,
for this
okay,
one,
6
yeah.
for 400 units. I just want to change quickly to shadow. The shadow impact from this building, it's so tall that it actually hits Mervyn Avenue. And I just wondered if, because I know the public is listening and there were questions from constituents of Ward 2, how does staff evaluate and okay the shadow impacts of this particular building? It's taller than all the others. I shouldn't say all the others, but its shadow impacts because of how north it is in the block is taller than the others. Is there a general way that staff addresses what is acceptable and what's not?
Back to you, Mr. Chair. I may ask Allison Reed or one of our staff to step in here, but I'll just start by saying generally, we do ask for sun shadow studies for all of these types of proposals, all tall building proposals. I myself have looked at the shadow diagrams here. There's no question that earlier in the day, during the general time frame which we look at, which is roughly, Allison can correct me, 10:18 or 11:18 too. Okay, till mid-afternoon. There is a progression of shadow that runs to the northwest of the site and then eventually goes to the northeast of the site, and it does cross to the north side of Bloor Street. There is some incremental shadow impact. To some degree, this is an evaluation call. We look at these shadow diagrams and look what's the cumulative impact with all the other buildings proposed or built in the area and make a call on it. In this case, we generally find it acceptable, but there is some incremental impact. Perhaps, Allison, you might be able to add on this?
I'm going to try to squeeze in one more question, but yeah. Go right ahead, Allison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alison Reed, Program Manager, Urban Design in Etobicoke, York. So we did look very closely at the shadow impacts of this particular proposal. We do focus on impact in the neighborhood areas at the equinoxes, so March and September. And there are long shadows early morning, 9:18. Around 10:18, the shadows actually cast over the hydro corridor, so not so much in the neighborhood at all. And then by 11:18, 12:18 onward, it's very limited impact, sort of the first property or so along the side streets north of Bloor, which is actually quite consistent with what we might expect from mid-rise development on the north side of Bloor in the fullness of time. So based on that, the 1 hour or so of very early morning shadow, longer shadows in the afternoons would also be cast by mid-rise along Bloor. Staff felt that the shadow impact was adequately limited and minimized in the neighborhood area.
Okay. Mr. Vice Chair, may I ask one more question? Don't go away, Allison.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. It's related to this, it's wind as well. So I did have some concerns expressed from the community about the wind conditions arising from this building. I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about what staff's evaluation was of wind effects from this, particularly the building's placement in relation to its podium and how close it is to the street, and what opportunities may still be available if this item is approved by council to deal with wind.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair, again. So we did look at the wind consultant study prepared in support of the application. We do know that in Etobicoke Centre in general, we do have strong and elevated wind conditions that we have to deal with on every site. We have a very low-rise context to the north and a lot of winds that come from the north and west and hit tall buildings in the center. So it is something we're actually very, very particular about in our reviews in the area. We did review the wind consultant's assessment, And actually, changes from the original proposal to what's before you today do include an increase in building stepbacks from the podium, from the base building, in order to help with any sort of downwashing impacts. We also have recommendations from the wind experts, things that we can look at further through the site plan control process, which include canopies, overhangs, windscreens, things like that, that will help further improve the conditions in the surrounding area and on the building site and amenity areas as well. So staff are satisfied with the combination of improvements we were able to make to the massing to address wind, and also the ability to further improve wind conditions through site plan.
Thank you. Councillor Nunziata, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just one question. I've never seen this before in an application. The amenity space, as far as the to provide on-site dog amenities with proper disposal facilities, relief stations. Is this new? I've never seen that before. So is this just for the residents that move in the building? Okay.
Back to you, Mr. Chair. Actually, this kind of requirement is increasing and we see it in many new tall building proposals. I mean, I don't have the facts on how many people are owning dogs these days, but there's clearly people do have dogs in these high-rise buildings, and we are securing amenity features in some of these buildings that relate to servicing the dogs that the owners have in the building. So yeah, this is actually increasingly common.
Oh, okay. I've never seen that. So in all the tall buildings,
Yeah.
planning would be recommending it.
Yeah.
But not an off-leash dog park.
Sometimes that does occur. If there's a nearby park space or pop space that is part and parcel of the development we're reviewing, sometimes there is a off-leash dog walking area secured as part of that open space, yes.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Members wishing to speak? I know I will. So if it's all right, I'm going to go first, and then we'll allow the local councillor to finish it. Okay. I'm going to present a motion, Nancy, if I may. My motion is really, we've seen it already today, that is to prohibit the application of parking permits for the residents at these buildings. I've got a lot of concerns, and Mr. Gascoigne provided very professional answers and did what he could, but it is what it is, and there's three things that stand out to me. The first is the situation with the parking. I mean, I disagree with the way that it was presented. I disagree with the staff's recommendation for approval on the report, notwithstanding, as the speaker told us, council did reduce the bylaw requirements. The concern I've got, though, is that there isn't on-street parking. I know the area well, I understand it well. There just isn't spaces there. The Greenpeace site is much further away, close to the subway station. But most importantly, Etobicoke Centre Ward 2 begins north of Bloor Street. And so there's Jopling Avenue, Botfield, Brennan. They already have issues with people parking there illegally. I can only imagine what is going to happen when you mix multiple buildings in this zone, and a building like this that has 5 visitor spaces is just not realistic to find a parking spot on the street to service it. And so it's going to put pressure on the neighborhood, specifically the constituents of Ward 2. And this building is in Councillor Morley's area on to the south. Her lens on this is a little different, but it's not something that I can support because of that. The second item, some concerns have been raised about wind and just about the size of this building by local residents. And I think most people are of the view that, some development is going to happen. Density is anticipated in this area, but I have the original diagrams from the Etobicoke Centre plan, and it talks about an FSI of 3.5 on this block. It talks about having a maximum height of 60 meters, and here we are, we're almost double that on this particular site. Now, fast forward to 2023, sure, things are going to change over time, but this is almost double, and it's also a building which is being organized to the north of that block. But if you read it in the context of the other buildings that have gone in the vicinity of that, some I voted for, some I voted against, you will find that being at the north end of the site, it's still quite tall. And I respectfully disagree with the recommendations of staff. I think it's too tall. It should come down a little bit. And the third, and the piece that ties to that, is the shadow. And if you go through the shadow studies, yes, there's going to be some shadows on the neighborhood, but you'll see this building, because of its location at the north end of the block, punches even further. And it puts entire houses into shadow over periods of time. That's a little different than some of the other buildings in the area. So, on behalf of the community that I represent, which are the people to the north that are going to feel the impact of this site more than anyone else, I'm going to oppose it. But I will ask that you support my parking amendment, and that sends a really clear message to anybody that is looking at either purchasing or renting, depending on the final disposition of this building, that you have to be mindful of your parking requirements and that you cannot rely on the City of Toronto, the residents, and the streets around to deal with the parking issues. And if you own a vehicle and you get a place here and you don't have a plan to park it, there isn't someone to help. So that is going to fundamentally change the neighborhood. It's something that everyone is rightfully concerned about. And I want to make sure that I highlight that in this process as members consider approving or not approving it. But I think someone has to say at some point in time that despite all of the housing mania, not everything is okay just to push through. And I do appreciate the work of the staff, and I respect tremendously a lot of it. But I do take a difference in opinion on some of the matters highlighted today, and I'm going to indicate that with my vote. But other than that, I will thank you for hearing me out and hope you support my motion, and turn the microphone over to Councillor Morley, Deputy Mayor Morley, who is the local councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate your comments and all of the good history and context that you're able to provide related to the site and the neighborhood as well. As you say, I do come at this a little bit differently. I do have a motion, if clerks could please bring that up, which would just be an amendment to the staff recommendations, which reads, City Council requests the Chief's planner and Executive Director, City Planning or designates to continue working with the applicant to secure additional bike parking spaces, vehicle parking spaces, bike share stations, and car share spaces through the site plan control review process for the subject site. I do have a couple of perspectives that I think differ just slightly with my colleague as it relates to the really critical need for us to get moving on putting density where density fits in, and that's where existing infrastructure is. And as we know through our major transit station area priorities, this does in fact is in keeping with that. That being said, despite all of our best interests and sort of desires around everybody jumping on the subway, we know there's actually significant investment and additional work required for us at the city end to ensure that our TTC and public transit is up to snuff and reliable and accessible for all people. So that work is ongoing, but I do believe, and as our chief planner here in the West End alluded to, a bit of a sober second look at our existing parking policies, I think, are required because the transition time that takes from people to change their behaviors is probably a little bit longer than we might hope. So I will be supporting staff recommendations and approval on this item with this caveat, and I will also be supporting the motion from my colleague, Councillor Holiday, which I think does take important steps to protect the interests of the residents to the north and ensure that any negative impacts from a development of this size can be mitigated. So that's my motion. I hope colleagues will support.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? All right, we'll take a vote on the amendments. And Madam Clerk, which one is going first? Okay, my amendment. All those in favor with the amendment? Any opposed? That amendment carries. On the amendment by Deputy Mayor Morley. All those in favor? Any opposed? And on the item as amended, I am going to ask for a recorded vote.
All those in favor of the item as amended? Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Nunziata, Councillor Morley, Councillor Crescent. Any opposed? Councillor Holliday. That motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you. All right, items EY 7.4, 56, 58, and 60, Fieldway Road, zoning bylaw amendment application decision report approval. There are two speakers. First is Zachary Schenk. Is Zachary in the chamber or online? Okay. The next speaker is Adam Rogers. I know Adam was online previously. Adam, can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello, Adam.
I can
Welcome
hear you.
back.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes to speak. Please begin when you're ready.
I am ready, and I'll keep this nice and short. Okay, perfect. So I got to say this plan looks pretty good. I think really as long as, and this might be in the site plan, we can sort this out, but as long as the city can get that transfer of potential parkland, which is really needed in that particular area with the amount of development that's going in. But it looks like the developers are seeming to be willing to play ball. So as long as we push to get that commitment of a transfer of potential parkland, I think we should go through with this. I mean, if it goes the other direction, maybe we have to address it again. But other than that, I think let's just get that done and go forward with it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Are there any questions of Adam? Seeing none, I will call again to see if there are any other speakers, or is Zachary Schenk available? Okay, that's the end of the speakers. Questions of staff? Are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, to speak on the item, Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is another large-scale development in the same neighborhood as the file we just dealt with there in and around the Kipling Station neighborhood. There is quite significant density, but on this site, they have actually quite a considerable amount of parking as well as bike and other amenities on site that I think will make this a good fit for the neighborhood. I will be moving staff recommendations on this file.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. Next item is EY 7.8, 4195, and 4221, Dundas Street West, and 556, 558, 560, 562, and 564, Prince Edward Drive North, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw applications, appeal report, Ward 3. And we have two speakers registered for this. First speaker is John Ialeggio. John, you available? Great. Welcome. I think it's welcome back, John. You have 5 minutes to speak, and you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? That's good. I'm not a public speaker. I'll do the best I can. I've been here before. Councillor Morley, thank you for having us involved in the process. I'm talking on behalf of the Kingsway Ratepayer Association and the community members and neighborhood that's heavily invested in this process. As you know, we had a petition of 700 strong. It's still growing. I'm here to speak because we still believe that this project is still overreaching and egregious as before, despite the revisions made. Three things to speak about. We did meet with your staff, and we proposed an alternate plan for their consideration without prejudice. They were very helpful in discussing and aligning our views. So should we proceed down the road to the tribunal, which we have party status, we will continue to support the city through our own efforts and our fundraising, et cetera, and our time and effort. As you may recall, previously the EMS lands are now removed from the site due to our involvement, or catching this kind of omission or transgression, if you will. So we think our role is kind of comprehensive and creative to the process, but obviously it doesn't rely heavily on just our involvement. We do want to help the city kind of further this to the tribunal, which I think it should still go that way. We think it should still go that way. It's 660 units, up to 14 stories, 4 towers, excessive, intensive to the fault of poor community planning, I would say. 2 roadways off Prince Edward Drive, heavy traffic concerns, et cetera, right? Like I mentioned before, the alternate plan was shared with your city staff, and Ali's been very cooperative and doing the best he can, along with his colleagues, to, despite the stresses of the city and the mandate of housing, which I'm personally professionally involved in through my federal agency of financing these type of projects, some not too far from here, quite honestly. We are aligned in furthering housing, and I'm on the money side of things. But the thing is, good community planning is lacking here, and also poor due process in informing the public. And what you have in front of you are some pictures I provided. Over a year of pushing and asking, we finally got an updated site notice on site. It's nice, it's good, it talks about what's currently in front of everybody, but it's not easily visible through this bush, but also more importantly on Prince Edward Drive, where 5 houses are being planned to be removed. There's no indication whatsoever of any potential application going forward. So it's more of a due process information to the public, what's going on. And it's quite remarkable when my neighbor across the street from me, where I live, right next to this site, was not even informed of what's going on. So I think by putting excuse me, an additional sign on Prince Edward Drive would be in the best interest of community engagement, to inform the public, and to at least allow for good due process to happen. I think this applicant has made somewhat of a mockery of the process by working in the shadows too much, not being forthcoming, maybe afraid to disclose what's going on. I just hope that we can have an informed public that knows what's happening and not rely on our efforts of Kingsway Repair Association and the public to do that for them, right? So we ask that if this council can make it part of their recommendation, not allowing it to go to the tribunal, also to improve the signage on the site. I know it's a technicality, but I think it's something that's been lacking for a grassroots informative process. So I'll leave it there, but I just appreciate your indulgence, Councillor Morley, for your staff's indulgence too. I think it's just one of those things that's frustrating to further a process with full knowledge and understanding that what's happening. It's been clear short of that right now. So that's my comments.
Thanks, John. Are there any questions of the speaker? I have one really fast one. These are the diagrams. Mine has a red line on it.
That shows the property line to where my property is.
Okay.
I'm abutting that property. That's the distance on Prince Edward Drive. I'd recommend to have additional signage put on, at least one sign to inform the public what's happening on that street, right?
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Adam Rogers. Adam, hopefully you're still online.
I am here.
Go ahead when you're ready.
I
Thanks,
guess.
Adam.
No problem. So I didn't grow up in this area. I went to school in this area. I know this lot very well, and honestly, development here makes sense. I just think, unfortunately, from reviewing this whole case, it hasn't been handled in the right way with developers, as the Kingsway Association member just mentioned. I'm actually shocked how they approached it. You know, I could even imagine if they were a bit more open in their development plans, this wouldn't be at the situation it is. Ultimately, a couple things I'm surprised at, and I think need to be addressed is parking, both driving and bike. I don't see anything in the report about how that's going to happen in this area. Let's just be honest. This area is underserved by transit. We're talking about one bus that hits that area, and I know from personal experience when I went to school in this area, good luck, that bus is not exactly frequent. Now, I'm not saying we need to pile on parking and we need to have that, but we need some plan. I can't see anything in that report, so where's the parking on this front? Bike parking, visitor parking, handicap space or disability spaces, I should say, sorry, or just residence parking. And that area can't support on-street parking the same degree. I mean, seriously, that's Dundas and Prince Edward. It's really shocking. And the other thing is, I think the green space, from reviewing the staff's report, it's that should be moved closer to Dundas. From what I can see, it's basically serviced by a private road into the middle of the site, which is going to make it not even accessible for the people if it's a public park, it is only still going to be accessible to the people who live there, and the residents who live in the area won't really get access to it. I think a improvement on that front can definitely be done. That green space can be moved closer to Prince Edward, so more folks have access. Really, this is surprising, I got to say. I've reviewed a lot of these plans, and of all the plans I've seen in Etobicoke Lakeshore, this one is, as mentioned, almost one of the most secretive, as if they're trying to just go straight to the tribunal steps rather than going through the due diligence. But I don't know. I can't speak to their planning, and I don't want to make any undue inferences on that front, but it is a bit surprising, and I hope that the community council takes a second look and supports the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, I will ask, are there any other speakers to this item? Seeing none, questions of staff? Councillor Morley? Deputy Mayor Morley, sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question to staff, just wanting to pick up on the point that John made around the signage on the site and the recommendations to have additional signage in other sort of corners so it's more prominent and more accessible to local residents. I know my team has been working closely trying to even get the updated signage, and that has been a bit of a challenging process, but I'm glad it has been done, and we are interested in having additional signage go on. So I just wanted to get a sense of, is there precedence for having signage at multiple locations on a larger site? First question. Second question, is it most efficient for us to include that as an amendment to the motion, or is that something that staff can take as direction to move forward on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I've had this question before. There's not a clear policy on signage in terms of its location. Our general practice has been to be logical about it. If there's a couple frontages to the site, then we normally would say, have a sign on each frontage. We do find ourselves sometimes chasing applicants to get signage up to date and have the correct name on it, etc. I'm told by Ali, I haven't been to the site myself recently, but he tells me that a new sign has been positioned on the corner of Prince Edward Drive North and Dundas Street West. So up-to-date signage is there now. I think in this case, given the history of the site, that it's at the OLT, that the neighborhood has been very involved and party to this, it would, we can chase further for more signage, but I would think most people know about what's happening on this site. The signage has been updated. Would we have preferred another, signs on both frontage? Yes, but this is probably sufficient.
Just a follow up to that. So if we've got my understanding is it is the onus of the applicant to provide and to install the signs. But if we have a copy of it, anyways, we'll take this offline, but I do just want to reflect that I think it's an important consideration, and especially because despite it being at the OLT, there does continue to be different iterations of the plan that's been presented as the process has gone forward, and I do think it's a helpful way for us to keep area residents informed and up to date on that. So I will take that offline, and we'll continue to work and see how we can move that forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nunziata.
Yeah, just a question with staff on the consultation meeting. So there was a public meeting in 2016 and then a second meeting on January 2023.
Yes, Councillor. This has been a challenging site and proposal, right? It was one that we have previously reported on to committee and council. In fact, sought appeal directions not too long ago on this, but the applicant, it's involving changing dynamics, including at one time the ambulance station was included in this site without the authorization of the city to include the ambulance site on this site. This current iteration takes city lands off this application. Because it's been under appeal and through a lengthy OLT process to date, it does affect community consultation. It's happened, as you know, where sometimes we don't have any community consultation because of a pending mediation session or a hearing coming up. In this case, staff did hold a meeting this January to try and bring up to speed people in the neighborhood, but that was the last one.
124 people that attended the one in 2023. Okay, so
That-
yeah.
And that community, and Ali could maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I think that meeting, or a counselor might know, was to bring the neighborhood up to speed on where the appeal was at that time and the report we were bringing to council in the spring. So there hasn't been, I don't believe, a community consultation meeting on this change proposal where the ambulance station has been removed. But at this point, this is so embedded at the OLT that that's why we're coming here to seek new direction or clarified direction.
Right. Just a question, as far as transit on Dundas Street, are you aware or do you know if Metrolinx is proposing an additional line on Dundas where the St. Clair and Scarlet Road Bridge, the widening of that bridge? We were told the reason for the delay for the bridge was that Metrolinx wanted to add an additional rail along that corridor. Are you aware of that?
I don't know if any of my colleagues can speak to it. I've heard similar to what you've heard,
was told
but
that's why the delay.
nobody has briefed myself or us on this, or I can't say with any certainty any of this is the case. I think in terms of this site and this location, how it's currently served by TTC and buses is probably how it's going to be for a long time.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? To speak, Councillor Morley, Deputy Mayor Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, we will be moving staff recommendations on this item and want to thank the community members through the Kingsway Ratepayers Group and others who've been really addressing and been on the front lines of advocacy, of ensuring that community members are aware of the lack of due process in this case. And I think our staff, I know our staff have been highly engaged and continue to review this application as different iterations come in and continue to hold firm on some of our positions as a city to make sure that any final application here is in keeping with what fits into the neighborhood and is what is acceptable through our various planning policies, which we are not there yet. So we do look forward to staff continuing to be party to this OLT process along with the members of the community to hold firm on our position and ideally get something that's favorable to all parties. So that's the motion, and I hope my colleagues will support.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? Staff recs carried. My apologies. The clerk reminded me that we skipped EY 7.5, which is 111 Plunkett Road. We just held that item down during the rundown. Councillor Perruzza. Councillor Perruzza moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. Next item is EY 7.9, 55 Allanhurst Drive, request for a fence exemption to the Toronto Municipal Code, Chapter 447. We have speakers on that item. The speaker is Jacob Husika. Morning, Jacob. Welcome to the Etobicoke York Community Council.
Good morning. Thanks for having me here
Got
today,
5
Council.
minutes and start when you're ready.
So I'm seeking a fence exemption we live on a corner lot. We built a new fence there. We've been there for about 2 years now. That encompasses basically what would be our side yard / backyard. We consulted very closely with all of our neighbors, including those directly to the west of us. We are on the corner, and those to the south of us. The neighbor to the south actually joined in on the project, and together jointly we built new fences that share our property line. All the neighbors were very strongly supportive of us trying to build a proper backyard for ourselves. Our house is located on the southeast corner of Allanhurst, southwest, I guess, southeast corner of Allanhurst, where it meets Woodbury. And the ground slopes pretty drastically on this corner. So all houses to the north of us have a very clear view into our backyard, even with our new fence, unfortunately. And all houses to the south of us are actually two-story homes. So we're struggling and trying to do the best we can to afford ourselves some kind of privacy in our backyard. Upon completion of the fence project, I had a visit from the city staff saying that a complaint was made. I tried to understand from where, since I worked so closely with the neighbors. And quite candidly, he said, I can't say exactly, but I'll tell you that it was somebody over 20 houses away. And even he shrugged and said, I'm sorry that you have to deal with this. The conversation at the time was whether or not this is a backyard or front yard. I explained that this is a corner lot. This is the norm in the neighborhood if you look at all the other corner lots, and this would be considered a backyard or side yard. The city staffer said he believes it's a front yard at this time, and that's how the complaint was filed, and it was due to height of the fence for a front yard. Front yard fence obviously needs to be much lower. So we prepared the file that you see in front of you showing all the other corner lot houses. You can see photos of me standing next to those fences just to give you some perspective on the height and the norm of where these fences are located. The city, advised me to go through the exemption process, and we continued from there. I have letters of support from all of my neighbors, including those directly to the west of us, Violet and George Chugaloff. As you can see in the letter, they've been in this community since the very beginning. They were strongly supportive of us building the fence as they understand the situation that we were in. We consulted with them very closely, even to the fact of like, what material would you like me to use? They're fixed income seniors. My wife and I made a decision that we would not ask them to contribute for the fence. The neighbor behind us agreed, and we built over 200 feet of fence that they now directly benefit from, both on our side of the lot and then on the south side from our neighbor to behind us. Unfortunately, the Jugaloffs came by my door probably in the winter time, I want to say around January of 23, rang my doorbell and said, we'd like to talk to you about the fence. We've had a change of heart. They said that they don't like the location of the fence anymore, and they'd like for me to move it back essentially to where it was. Since building the fence, we've obviously poured concrete to build a shed. We've laid sprinklers. We've laid new sod. I tried desperately to explain this is not an easy thing to undo. The response I got was, you are young, you will find the money. So I said, thank you, for sharing your concern. Let me look into the matter and see what can be done. And my intention was to continue with the exemption process and get advice from the council and the city staff. But between now and that time, so about almost a year or 9 months, I did get an update from the city. They came by and they said that actually you had it right. It's not a backyard, or not a front yard. It's a side yard / backyard. But we have concerns now over the location of the fence. And what I deduced was that they got new complaints from the neighbors next to me, and they were now maybe revising the case file. So what you see on the agenda today is actually about fence height. It sounds like the city's actually changed their position on fence height, but now I'm here to sort of defend in a different matter. I'm seeking exemption to keep the fence as is. This is the only way we can have any sort of semblance of privacy. It is the norm within the neighborhood if you look at any of the corner lots. In fact, 2 new fences have gone up within a minute from our door walking, exactly like this one. So that's really the long and the short.
Thanks, Jacob. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none. Thank you for joining us. Yeah. No questions of you. You want to go ahead, Councilor Crescent?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm just thinking about this. So you have a very unique situation. Looks like your address is Allanhurst, and your garage is facing, a front door is facing Allanhurst, so that's your municipal address. And I understand this is something that not uncommon. You're in a very unique situation here. What did you have prior to this 6-foot fence? Did you have?
We had a 6-foot fence, but it was set back further, so the yard was almost half of its size. And we noticed when we got there.
So I'm sorry, why would you set it back?
It was initially set back. We brought it forward to have almost twice the backyard because we didn't have much of a backyard initially. So the fence was flush with the garage, still 6 feet in height.
Yeah, but all within your property line?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
so you're within
And it's
your-
remained within the property line. We just brought it, call it northward, closer to the sidewalk, so that we'd have more proper backyard space. In the, I can't give you the exact dimensions off the top of my head. Looking at the drawings here, I got about 50-foot long backyard in its current state.
Right.
It was less than half of that previously. So we try to give ourselves a proper backyard.
No, no worries. So it's just that the bylaw doesn't address the unique situation that you're in.
It doesn't, and initially, the initial complaint was, as we learned, an error about whether or not it was a side yard or front yard, and the complaint was that I made a fence too high in what was deemed a front yard. The staff came back and actually reconsidered and said, no, this is a proper backyard, continue with your exemption. So everything was fine, as I shared even with my immediate neighbors.
Right.
Since then, they've decided that they no longer like the fence. And they'd prefer for me to move it back. Unfortunately, it's really hard to move a fence back.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other?
Is it to move back or to cut down? Like, it's.
Move back specifically.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Nunziata.
Just clarification. So when you move the fence, it's still on your property line?
Correct.
Right? And there's no site restrictions or anything?
None.
Okay.
Okay. That's all the questions, right? No more? Okay.
And
Thank you.
my ask is to keep the fence as is without any modification, so that we can have some proper privacy. As you can look in the file, I also included a letter from a religious leader. My wife wears the headscarf. She won't have any sort of reasonable enjoyment of her backyard if we move this fence any further.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Questions of staff? May I pass the chair to Vice Chair? Chantal?
Because you have some questions.
Yes.
Please, proceed.
Ms. Cormier, thank you for joining us. I just wondered if you could describe a little bit about what you observed on site, and more specifically around the concerns where we're at with respect to sight lines. You took some measurements. So the fence isn't right at the corner of the driveway. It's set back a little bit.
Yep. Good morning, Chantal Cormier, Supervisor for the West District Municipal Licensing and Standards. Through you, Chair, I attended the property last week on Tuesday, I believe. Took some measurements at 55 Allanhurst. So the corner of the fence is actually right next to the driveway. So my measurements measured approximately the whole width of the panel that's next to the driveway would be within the 2.4 meters. I believe there's about 2 inches off of the first panel. And then the driveway is about 1.3 meters from the start of the fence along the street line. So the fence, in order to be open construction, would need to be 1.1 meters in from the corner of the driveway.
Okay. And it's the same case on both sides. There's a little bit of a buffer between the driveway and the fence, but it's not the full 2.4 meters.
Through your chair, that's correct.
And do we, without identifying, because I don't know either, but someone talked to me, someone has made a sightline complaint.
Through you, Chair, I cannot confirm or deny right now. I'm
Okay.
not too sure about the actual nature of the complaint or if it was an observation made by an officer when they attended.
Okay. Thank you for speaking to us. Did anyone else have any questions? Nope. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I will speak. I have a motion. We'll put it up and then I'll walk everyone through it. Mr. Zika came and spoke to us, and he's laid it out really well. This has been a very, very challenging situation. Moreover, because Mr. Zika and his wife have done a beautiful job landscaping a property that they got. They've put new concrete, new walkways, a brand new fence. The fence was flush with the house, but they moved it out a little bit, not uncommon in Etobicoke. They went and they collected signature upon signature of support. And what you will find if you look in the materials that accompanied this, one of those signatures is changed. And that is very awkward, very difficult for this community council now to contend with because it had been all sorted Throughout the process, I have no concerns with the aesthetics of the fence, and whether or not it is too tall or not, I'm good with it. I'm completely good with it. The site looks pristine. I went and I visited it. But we did hit something that is, it's now a health and safety issue, and that has to do with the sight lines. And very specifically, I spoke to one of the neighbors, and the neighbor to one side is absolutely adamant that they cannot see backing out of the driveway. If you read the bylaw to the letter, you will find that the corners of the fence intrude into that sightline triangle. So my recommendation, and this is after quite a bit of work with MLS, and to Mr. Zika's defense, I'm not sure he's completely happy with this, but I've done everything I can to make it as easy as possible. I'm going to ask that the fence be opened up on the two corners where they meet the driveways. And it's literally because there's a sightline obstruction as it reads in our bylaw. What we need is about 8 feet from the driveway, that sightline triangle. That means that about 3 feet, 3.5 feet of the corner of the fence sticks into that sightline triangle on both the sides. I've talked to Ms. Cormier, and I didn't prescribe how to do it. Right? There's a whole bunch of different ways to modify the corners of the fence. I'm going to leave that into Mr. Zika's hands to see how he sees fit, but it can be as simple as removing every other board for about half of the panel. Mr. Zika has raised very valid concerns about privacy. And it's true, when you open up the corner of a fence, that does allow someone to look in. I guess they could look over, they could look in. On one side, Mr. Zika is planning a shed. And doing all the math, I think he can still put the shed and cover that. On the other side, he'll have to think of to see if there's a little bit of landscaping he can put inside to close up that 3 feet. But it leaves the community council in a very, very awkward position, because I think all of us would very readily support someone that's done a great job to landscape their property and make it look nice. I'm very clear there are neighbors that have maybe said they support this, and now they've turned around and said they don't. And for some reason, people don't like the fence. And the answer back was, I'm okay with the fence, and I'm going to support the fence at community council, and that's too bad. But we are put in a very difficult spot when there's a sightline issue and there's a sidewalk there. And I walked it and I checked it, and it's true. I mean, if you're backing out of the driveway, they're very short driveways. If someone was coming along with a dog or a child on a bike, we've got to be cognizant of that. So I am going to ask that they be opened up. I'm available to Mr. Zika and MLS to try to make sure that we do that as easily as possible. But my motion essentially says we, regardless of the front yard, backyard, whatever the height issues may be, we grant that. But we do ask as a condition of that to really satisfy the requirements of the bylaw. And if we don't deal with that today, somebody can go and make a complaint in the future, and we'll be right back here discussing the same thing. So I've talked it over with MLS, and I think they're able to support this motion out here is simply to bring those two corners into compliance. And I thank you, Mr. Zika, for working with me and for your patience through this process. I've done as much as I can to make it as safe as possible. That's the motion I'm putting before Community Council. If my colleagues have any questions of me, go right ahead, but that's where we're at with this, and I hope for your support. Okay, anyone else wishing to speak? Unfortunately, our process doesn't allow you to talk. You're most welcome to give me a call after the meeting and we can set something up. Any questions? Great. Okay, on the amendment, all those in favor? On the item as amended? Thank you, Nancy. So that is done. Thank you, everyone. Okay, next item. Nancy, my screen. Okay. EY 7.16 Government Road traffic calming poll results. We have a speaker. That is Adam Rogers. Adam, are you still online?
Yes, sorry, I was just waiting to be added as a panelist again.
Adam, are you can hear us clearly? We can hear you?
Yes, I believe so. Can you
Great.
hear me?
So we're on item number 16, which is Government Road traffic calming. You're registered to speak, so please begin when you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, I'm ready to go. All right. I have been. I reviewed the government road traffic calming poll results request, and I was actually a bit surprised that at the staff recommendation. Staff is very, very strong, and I trust their judgment. But in this case, I'm a little surprised because this polling had a more than 50% return, and of that, 71% were in favor of putting these speed traffic calming measures, if you will. This is a pretty high return on something of this nature, and I went to Lambton Kingsway School. I know this neighborhood. I have my daughter who doesn't live in the neighborhood, but I comes and visits friends in this area. She's a toddler. So I know this area very well, and I know residents there who I was speaking to on this issue, and I think they're equally surprised about this return. I mean, government, let's be honest, it's not exactly new that people tend to speed on government trying to get on towards this to school. And this stretch of government is right beside Lambton Kingsway School, or nearer to there, from my understanding reviewing it. So I think this area is very family-oriented. There's a lot of families, a lot of young kids in this area, and I think traffic calming measures of this nature would be very helpful and beneficial. I also reviewed the time frame when this actual speed the follow-up of this timing, and it was I noticed in 2021. Which I might mention would be when students, especially it was in November 2021, which means there would be no kids at Lambton Kingsway School at that time. So I don't think this is necessarily is indicative of what would be normal traffic levels in 2023. 2021, with no students going to Lambton Kingsway versus now, I think is a different time, and it's something to be considered in that fact. Honestly, I do appreciate. I did read appreciate about fire's concern. Sorry, I should say fire services concern about access to that area, and that's definitely valid concerns. But from again, I'm not 100% sure on which fire station would be servicing that area, but I would imagine that area would be serviced probably by the Prince Edward location. So this is not touching Prince Edward. This is touching government. So the access on Prince Edward for fire service would still remain. I mean, perhaps the councilors can speak to the staff on this recommendation, but ultimately, I think this would be beneficial to the families in this area. This is not a new issue. This has been. I went to the school, dating myself, but I went to the school in the 90s, and government being an issue of fast drivers is not. This is not new. This street is something to be considered. Again, I'm not a direct resident there. As I said, I don't live in the area anymore, but I did speak to parents who do live there, who were in support of this. And as I mentioned, we're seeing over 50% return, and 70% of these people were in favor of this. So I think maybe council can reconsider, and even if we can't make a decision to go forward today, maybe we can go back and view again in 2023 speeds rather than 2021 speeds, when again it was the heart of the pandemic and no students were in those schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? I am going to ask Adam a couple of questions. If I may pass the chair over to the very capable Vice Chair Peruzza.
Please proceed with your questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Adam, I just wondered if you noticed in the report there was a little discussion in there about the 85th percentile speed. Did you catch that? It was between 40 and 44 kilometers an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, I read the report on the speed that they were recording, yes.
So I also wondered if you were aware that the history of this is that it was brought to Community Council through a letter by the councillor at the time, and that the technical process, which is the first step in traffic calming, wasn't completed. It went straight to poll.
Oh, I mean, that predates my my reading. I just this came across when I was reviewing other items, and I was reviewed. So unfortunately, I can't speak to that because it was before I was involved.
Fair enough. I appreciate you've indicated some support for this. Community Council is faced with a decision because we have some technical information and we have some polling results. Do you have any thoughts on how we will square the two up? Do you have any thoughts on how we would have a bar to figure out where traffic calming goes and where it doesn't? Because you can appreciate councillors get asked all the time about traffic calming.
Oh, no, I do. I mean, I guess the question is, I can't speak to the full how the city currently tracks the bar. I don't have that background to be able to say. I would say that the thresholds, at least polling wise, seem to be well past what was returned, in so much that more than, I think it's 25% is the bar. We had 50 plus 1%, and the returns on that were a 70%. So the community itself seems to be supportive of that, at least the affected community, directly affected community. So I would say that if the directly affected community is so in favor of this, that would weigh heavier, perhaps, than the other states. But again, I trust that the many of these councillors have seen this before. But at least that's my opinion. If the returns are this high in this with this percentage, I would weigh more heavy towards that, especially in the nature of the area that it is so close to a school.
Thanks, Adam. Any other questions for the speaker? Seeing none. Questions of staff? Seeing none. To speak, Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Adam, for your participation. We are of like mind on this issue, and I do have a motion. If clerks could put that up for me, please. I have a lot of similar sentiments that Adam had shared when we're looking at the return rate on this, and the overwhelming, what I would call overwhelming response from immediately impacted residents and their desire to see this installed and implemented in their immediate community. While we also appreciate that the community's voice is clear on this, there are also some peripheral changes to the neighborhood, whether it's installation of bike lanes on Bloor, south of the area here, or, as was mentioned, the return of children to school. We know that this is constantly, community safety is always top of mind for us. And if this is something that local residents are interested in, I do believe, to Adam's point, there's a high rate of return on this investment, including peace of mind for local residents. So the motion reads to authorize installation of traffic calming on Government Road between Thorndale Crescent, Mill Cove, and the Kingsway, despite the study results that did not satisfy the traffic calming warrant criteria for the installation of speed humps pursuant, to our traffic calming policy, and then further to direct the city solicitor to prepare a bylaw to alter the roadway to install 9 speed humps on Government Road between Thorndale Crescent, Mill Cove, and the Kingsway, generally as showed on the attachment to the report. So I know this has always been a controversial one. Implementation of traffic calming has not always been a favorite option of local council, but as I say, in my view, the voice of the local community most immediately impacted really does weigh heavily, and has been made very clear through the process here. So that's my motion. I hope my colleagues will support it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other speakers? I'm going to speak very briefly.
I'm just checking to see if I've ever been on that street. No, you know what, and I haven't, right? So I generally not in support of speed humps anyway. You've never seen me ask for that. Given that I'm not going to drive on that street, I'm not supporting
Thank you, Vice Chair Peruzza. Your microphone wasn't on, but you were musing whether or not you'd been on the street. Councillor Nunziata.
Well, so the local council is moving, but yeah, okay, which I do support, and I've been a big supporter of Vision Zero and some of these traffic issues. I don't know. Councilor Prutz, if you have an issue in your ward, but in my ward, and I'm sure other wards, is, now, I know that there's speed humps now on Prince Edward, right? Which has helped a lot, because there's a lot of through traffic actually that goes in that area from Dundas, down Prince Edward to Bloor, or Bloor to Dundas. Now with all the traffic on Bloor Street, everybody is taking Prince Edward Drive and going through the side streets to get to Dundas. But the poll results actually was quite high normally. And, you know, and there is a school in the area. So I do support the speed humps on the street. And I know that there's parts of the city where we have so much traffic going through our residential streets. And that's why we have such a huge demand of traffic calming, because it's chaos out there now. On the main streets, cars taking some of the side streets as a shortcut because of the volume of traffic on the main streets, all this construction. It's a nightmare. So, you know, I think it's important that residents are safe, children are safe in these communities, so I will be supporting it.
Any other speakers?
Can I just say something on just a little something? Yeah.
Councillor Perruzza.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we need to be cognizant of is this, that if we have, I forget what the number is, I think it's about 7,500 kilometers of roadways that kind of sort of intersect, that allow people to move around within our jurisdiction. If we take the 7,500 kilometers and we gum up, you know, 7,000 kilometers of that roadway, right? That means that you leave 500 for, you know, for basically people to move around this city. And I get it. I understand that. Everybody in their neighborhoods wants to feel safer. Everybody in their neighborhoods doesn't want cars, except their own. Their own multiple vehicles. There are 3, 4 cars they have in their driveway. They got no problem with those cars driving on their street, right? But don't want any other cars. So pave the road, maintain the road, clear the road of snow, and then only allow my car on it. So if we do that, what we're doing in this city, the one-ways, the counter one-ways, all of the roadblocks, under the guise of safety, under the guise of, I want to feel safer in my neighborhood, right? Then what you do is you just leave, you know, you leave a limited number of kilometers to make the city work. And then we whine about congestion, pollution, people sitting around not being able to get from A to B. Right? And then what we need to do is we need to do other things in order to move people around. Well, some of those other things would be let people move through the city, through the 7,500 kilometers of roads that you pave, maintain, clear snow, and all of those other things so that the city can work. Until, you know, I guess it becomes cost prohibitive to drive a car, and then we'll all move to some other form of you know, moving around. But until that happens, you know, we can't have it. You can't have it both ways. Noticing that the clock wasn't allowed to run, and I usually like to time my comments to the clock.
That was my mistake.
Yeah. I'll end it there, but you get the gist of this. Look, I'm going to support the local councillor in installing basically ambulance reducing, fire truck reducing, police car reducing speed bumps on this street, so that if you're having a heart attack on Government Road, you know, chances are the ambulance isn't going to get to you on time, and just, you know, like, there you go. Sure.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'm going to speak, and I'll ask you to take the chair. I'm not going to vote for this. It's about transparency in the process. So while it's true that the poll came back with the majority of support, 1 in 5 didn't support the speed humps. And I don't know what we tell them. And the reason is, council has a process to figure out where the speed humps go. We can't put them on every street. And my colleagues on community council know that we get these requests every day. There's always someone that would like to see speed humps on their street. The problem is not every street has a speeding problem. Yes, there are people that drive really fast once in a while and they do terrible things on the road. It's obnoxious. They need to get tickets. They need to see their insurance go up. But the answer can't be that we put speed humps everywhere because it would be unsustainable. And so one of the things that the city council approved was a process to go and measure what the speed was like on the street. And the staff gave that to us in this report. They alluded to it. They told us that the 85th percentile was 44 kilometers an hour. And the bar of measure, and I asked Adam Rogers about that because he spoke to us about it, but the bar of measure in council's process on this is 10 kilometers over the limit. And it's designed in a way that it says, yeah, it recognizes that once in a while someone's going to drive really, really fast. But where you've got a street where everyone is driving really fast, that's when you've got a speeding problem. And by council's definition. And in this case, it didn't meet it. At the time, I think the history on this is that the local councillor skipped that process and went straight to poll. Surprise, surprise, it came back. The majority supported it. I just think that community council should have a process which is transparent, replicatable, and is fair to everyone else, because there'll be others that will come along and say, well, I know I didn't meet the speed warrant, but I like it too, and I think the majority want it. And then we're stuck as a community council. So I'm going to vote against it. I guess I will have a bit of a split vote, but I wanted to make sure I put on record why I'm doing so. And it's not because I don't appreciate the concerns that the residents have on that street. It's just that you have to treat everyone in a transparent manner, and I don't prefer this process. So thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on that item? All those in favor, Madam Clerk, maybe we better do a recorded vote on that, on the recommendations before us.
So we have Councillor Morley's amendment before you. All those in favor of the amendment? Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Nunziata, Councillor Morley, Councillor Crescent. Any opposed? Councillor Holiday. That motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you to my colleagues. Okay, the next item. EY 7.18 on-street electric vehicle charging stations in various locations, parking amendments, non-delegated locations, wards 3, 5, and 7. Councillor Nunziata, you held the item.
Yeah, just have a question. Not that I'm against this, but so we're putting these charging EV charging station locations throughout the city, and so when we're putting them in, we're putting them on the main street. In fact, do we eliminate parking in the area where we're installing these charging stations?
Through the chair, this is Nazir Gunner from Transportation Services. When we put them on the main streets, they are, parking's still there. We're replacing the pay and display in some locations. In other locations, parking is allowed, and we're replacing it with EV charging.
So anyone can park in that space, even though they're not using the station?
No, they cannot.
Oh,
they
so
must be
you
an
can only
electric
use that
vehicle.
space if you're using the charging station then, right?
That's right. And you have to be, yes, you have to be an electric vehicle and actively charging while using those spaces.
Okay, so in areas then where we're installing them, if somebody is not charging, like how, It's not that I'm against this, I think it's great, but I'm just wondering how this is gonna work out, because those questions have been asked to me. So what kind of enforcement are we gonna have? Like, do we have parking enforcement going on and giving tickets? Like, what is there? I just need to know what the plan is, and, like, why?
The guy wanting to charge scratches
Yeah,
your car
yeah.
for that.
Why not put them in, like, TPA parking lots or something? I don't know. I'm just asking that question because I just want to know how it's going to, moving forward, how it's going to work. Because if we get complaints, then I don't know how we're going to handle them. If somebody says, oh, there's a car there, they're not charging their car, send parking enforcement out. So that's my question. Nothing specific on the report that's before us, but just a general report because there are recommendations throughout the city and that's being proposed. So that's the reason for my question.
Okay. Through the chair, the EV charging spots will be monitored on a regular basis. The company that supplies the charging dispensers flow at this time monitors each charging stations and their usage, and there is periodic patrolling of these locations. As we roll out more of these locations, we are working with also parking enforcement to monitor these locations that they're used properly and people are complying with the rules. That is to be an EV and actively charging. We were given direction by council to put most of these on major roads. Also, we are installing them in some permit parking areas, and TPA is also installing quite a number of EV chargers within their car parks as well. So as you recall, the Toronto Parking Authority, as of this year, took over ownership of our previous 47 chargers that were installed and will be managing the future installations as well.
Just one last question. So one of the proposals in my ward, which is at Western Road, south of Lawrence, there's the Metrolinx, there's the Go in the Up Express parking lot. Wouldn't it make more sense to put it in the parking lot than having you put it on the street?
Well, we were asked to install 50 new chargers this year by council. The TPA has identified a number of locations to install across a number of community council areas, and TPA has worked with the local councillors, as well as yourself, Councillor Lynn. Earlier this year, I think in January, TPA and myself were in a meeting with you to kind of propose potential locations on street. But you are correct. There should be EV chargers in these parking lots as well.
That's it for my question.
Thank you. Councillor Perruzza.
Yeah, so just generally, how did you decide on these locations? Like, is there like a criteria, or is it just like an opportunity? Or people in those neighborhoods have asked for example, at 320 Driftwood Avenue, right? You got two stations going in there. How did you decide that the corner of Niska and Driftwood should get two of these charging stations?
The TPA has been getting requests from area residents that are looking to buy an electric vehicle or have one and don't have a place to charge. And we found locations that were suitable in close proximity to where people were asking for EV charging. Okay. It may not necessarily at all times be on the same street as those individuals live, but they are in close proximity.
I understand. You answered it. So somebody called you and you found an opportunity, you did it. Okay. Listen, in terms of cost, what does it cost to put in one of the, and how is it going to work? So what is typically the cost of putting in one of these charging stations, more or less? I know that each location is going to vary somewhat, but you have a ballpark, right?
Through the chair, yeah, you are correct. It will vary from location to location, but typically these particular
just average.
Around $20,000 to $25,000 a piece.
25,000. And in terms of, so somebody comes along, plugs in, and then we, I presume, or somebody charges them for the electricity, right? Who's going to do that? Us?
That is all taken care of through the dispenser. It's you have to use a credit card or sign up to the program.
No. You're number seven. So we put in a station at a cost of $25,000, right? Who makes the money? I'm assuming somebody's going to sell the electricity. Who makes that money? Hydro?
Well, there's an arrangement that's between the Toronto Parking Authority and Toronto Hydro on how that will work for using the pole. They supply the power, and there's a minimal compensation that's provided for Toronto Hydro, but most of the revenue is collected by the TPA.
Okay, at some point, you recovered the $25,000 investment, and then who maintains the charging stations? Like, we maintain them, or does the parking authority maintain them?
To the chair, it is totally the responsibility of the Toronto Parking Authority.
Okay, so they maintain the charging station, like when the cables break, or when when the station needs to. Okay, fine.
That's correct.
Okay, so. Does the parking authority eventually repay us the $25,000 other than through their dividend?
The TPA.
Not the dividend. No. Sorry. Hydro gives us the dividend. The parking authority gives us their money. So I guess so, right? I guess we would recover that somehow, right?
Yes, I mean the TPA has an agreement with the city.
Councillor Holiday says he doesn't know.
Through the chair, the TPA has an agreement with the city in terms of collecting revenue and providing revenue to the city. But that
hey, listen, how many? This is a hypothetical. How many years away are we from cars that have photovoltaic, like their body? The cars made up of like photovoltaic cells or whatever, capturing sunlight and recharging the battery, and they will no longer need charging stations.
Through the chair, they do exist now, but they're not on the market.
No, I know, but more or less, like what would be the ballpark? 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years? Like how far away are we from that?
I wouldn't know, Councillor.
They're selling them now.
All right. No, they're testing them, but they're not selling them, he said.
No, I was on CP24 this morning.
They're
selling them.
They're selling them? Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of staff? Seeing none. Councillor Nunziata to speak.
Held it down for those questions. I support it.
Staff recs?
I support the staff rec. I guess just the question was asked to me as far as if somebody else parks on the street, on the main street, like what's going to happen. And but yes, you are correct. You did meet with me, and the BIA had some concerns on it, but we did approve the locations that was recommended. But I'm just hoping that, we do have the enforcement on it, because what we don't want is people coming by and just parking anywhere, and then there's a lack of parking. I don't know. I hope it works.
I can't imagine how this thing would work. Seriously,
I hope it works.
You go there, you need a charge, there's a car charging, you say, geez, what am I going to do now, right? You drive around, you go plug in something, and I don't get it. Where do you recoup them?
Okay.
Are there any other members of council
So
wishing to speak
I move
to
the
item?
recommendation.
Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recommendation. All those in favor, any opposed? That item is carried. EY 7.22, 801 the Queensway construction staging area, held by Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, as I will be moving deferral of this item. We've been working closely with staff on this issue, and to pick up on an earlier point from my colleague, Councillor Perruzza, around making sure people can move through the city efficiently and working not to necessarily interrupt traffic flow where it is really critical. The proposal before us would look at closing down a lane on the Queensway for a considerable period of time, and it is going to likely provide quite detrimental impacts to the neighborhood. So staff have been on site as of this morning, are working closely with the applicant. There are some temporary measures in place on Taymall, but we are pushing back to see if we can't come up with a better option where we can maintain traffic flow, both lanes open on the Queensway, while also making sure pedestrians can appropriately and safely navigate the construction site for the coming few years while it is underway. So I will be move to defer this item so we can come up with a better arrangement before the next community council.
Thank you. I will check. Were there any questions to staff? There are not. Councillor Morley moves an amendment to defer. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? That carries. Madam Clerk, do I need an item as amended? No, so that item is done. Okay. EY 7.23, Longbourn Drive between Willow Ridge Road and Redgrave Drive, implementation of permit parking. Councillor Crescent.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is, we already introduced it, right? We're good to go?
It has been introduced.
Okay. So I was just asking for, helping this community to resolve a parking issue that they have. The residents nearby have expressed interest in permit parking in the immediate area. The specific area we're talking about is located between Willow Ridge and Redgrave on a hydro corridor. There are actually no homes in the area. I'll just pass these photos along, which will put it all in perspective and in terms of. So there's nobody to poll in the area, but the staff have been great in working with me on this issue to resolve this issue and coming up with a parking solution in a timely manner. So I'm asking for committee's support in introducing permit parking in this stretch of the street. I'll also note that the bus only travels on the north side, does not come back on the south side. So it's not going to be a problem in terms of transit. But it does resolve an issue in the area when it comes to lack of parking and through, again, through a permitted parking. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions of the mover? Anyone wishing to speak? Madam Clerk, I need a recorded vote on this. All right, all those in favor, over to the clerk.
So a motion to, all those in favor of the motion to adopt by Councillor Crescent, Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Nunziata, Councillor Morley, Councillor Crescent. Any opposed? Councillor Holiday. That item carries.
Okay. I know.
Okay, EY 7.24, Habitant Drive and Bradstock Road, always stop control. Councillor Perruzza.
Good idea here, a stop sign, because no, this one actually doesn't gum it up so much. No, yeah.
Okay. Any questions of staff? Councillor Perruzza moves the recommendation. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries.
Even does it support stop signs?
EY 7.25, Laura Road and Lorimer Drive, always stop control. Questions of staff? Councillor Perruzza?
Move the rec.
Councillor Perruzza moves the recommendation. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. That was the last item of business. I'll check with the clerk if we have bills to move. We do.
Nobody has any cards in your ward.
Try moving through the maze of one-ways in the downtown area, seriously, like in most of those neighborhoods. And you hit like Earlington and you can't go anywhere anymore.
Vice Chair Perruzza is going to move the motion number 1.
I'm happy to do that. That bills 786 to 796 prepared for the September 18, 2023 meeting 7 of the Etobicoke Community Council be declared as bylaws and passed subject to 26.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006. Section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006. I don't want to get that one wrong. That's really
All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. May I have a volunteer for motion number 2? Deputy Mayor Morley moves.
My
move
pleasure,
adjournment.
Mr. Chair. That confirmatory bills to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Etobicoke York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 7 on September 18th, 2023 be declared as bylaws and passed subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. Vice Chair Peruzza moves adjournment. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff, for a very smooth meeting. Have a great day.